You know, if you share a link with Donald Trump, whether you're a friend or a colleague, there's a pretty good chance he'll ultimately disappoint you. That's just how it goes for everyone around him. And it's a tough lesson that J.D. Vance is about to learn firsthand. Trump is already starting to distance himself from Vance in what can only be described as a disastrous way for J.D. It feels like a soap opera unfolding, especially with all the turmoil surrounding the White House right now. Before I dive into the post where Trump openly mocks JD, I just want to take a moment to highlight Jasmine Crockett, who's really calling out the inhumanity of both Trump and Vance.
Someone promised that they would make America great. I am telling you that they are doing just the opposite. I am telling you that we are a land of immigrants. It is time to do immigration right. It is time to make sure that we live up to the promise of this country. The idea that someone ran and said that I will get rid of the bad guys, yet we know more than 50% of the people that are currently being detained in custody have no criminal records at all. Zero, nada. So tell me why you are taking those people out of their communities. They are our neighbors. They are our friends. And frankly, they contribute to the fabric of this country. They are what make this country great, not your thuggish ICE agents who literally are spitting on our Constitution.
Her words hit hard as she made a passionate plea about immigration, pointing out how they're failing to live up to America's promise. J.D. Vance, trying to emulate Trump, has taken it to a new low with his awful immigration rhetoric, competing with the likes of Stephen Miller for the title of Most Outrageous. It's quite a spectacle, isn't it? It's honestly hard to believe how Donald Trump just keeps outdoing himself with his comments, right? But then there's J.D. Vance, who manages to take things to a whole new level of awkwardness, especially considering his wife and her family. It seems like he just can't help but undermine their heritage while behaving like a complete fool, which is pretty much the essence of J.D. Vance. It's like he thinks tossing a little shade at his wife and doing some questionable things like grabbing Erica Kirk in certain circumstances will win him over with the MAGA crowd. And honestly, that's exactly what he's aiming for. What's wild is that Vance doesn't seem to have a firm grasp on any values or principles. It's all about chasing power for him. But here's the kicker. The polls aren't looking too positive for him at the moment. So before we dive into what Trump had to say, let's check out the recent polling numbers. They're showing that J.D. Vance's chances of becoming the Republican nominee for the 2028 presidential election are plummeting. According to McCollin and Associates, Vance's lead over Donald Trump Jr. in a hypothetical matchup has shrunk in recent months. Newsweek even reached out to representatives for both candidates for comments, but we're not hearing back just yet. Why is this important? Well, thanks to the 22nd Amendment, which was passed in 1951, presidents can only serve 2 terms, meaning Trump can't legally run for a 3rd time. Though neither Vance nor any other GOP hopefuls have officially thrown their hats in the ring for 2028, Vance, as the sitting vice president, has been seen as a likely candidate to carry on Trump's legacy. But with his popularity dipping, it could mean there's some backlash against the Trump era brewing. To give you a clearer picture, back in August, Vance had a solid 20-point lead over Trump Jr., who was trailing with 36% of the vote share compared to Vance's 16%, and that lead actually grew to a whopping 28 points in September. But come October, things took a turn. Vance still held a lead with 38% of the vote, but Trump Jr. was up to 20%, shrinking Vance's margin to just 18 points. So yeah, the polling landscape is getting a bit rougher for J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance really seems to be fixated on his own ambitions, and honestly, it feels like that's the only thing on his mind climbing his way to more power. It's pretty clear that his sights are set on the presidency. And with Donald Trump looking ahead to 2028, it's almost like he's poking fun at Vance, which is exactly what he did in his latest post. Now, there's this author, Jonathan Karl, who's tossed out an idea that Trump and Steve Bannon aren't actually serious about the notion of an unconstitutional 3rd term for the presidency. Instead, it looks like they're just messing around, perhaps to tease Vance, who many believe is positioned as Trump's potential successor. Just recently, Trump dropped another post labeled Trump 2028 on Truth Social, and it's pretty clear he's having a laugh at Vance's expense. It's actually refreshing to see everyone come together to agree on one thing. JD Vance isn't particularly well liked. We can argue about plenty of issues, but that's one point we can all rally behind. What's more interesting to me is how Vance has been struggling lately with his poll numbers, especially within the fracturing MAGA movement. If he had any support, you'd think Trump might back him a bit more, but instead, he seems to be distancing himself. Part of the issue could be linked to Vance's silence on some pretty serious matters, particularly the Epstein cover-up. He's always ready to defend Trump, but when it comes to that, he goes quiet. It does raise eyebrows. What is he hiding? And as for more juicy information, Ari Melber has been diving into the latest on the Epstein situation. He's reported that Congress just passed a law shaking things up, which basically forces the Trump administration and the Department of Justice to hand over a bunch of documents. This could change everything. As Ari breaks it all down in a two-part series on YouTube, he's focusing on the communications from the Justice Department that might just shed light on both the Trump administration's actions and the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death. There are about 5 categories of documents they're digging into, and this matters because they're officially laid out in the law. It's bound to get interesting. So we're diving into this situation with the Department of Justice and the political climate right now, especially after that major blow Trump just took. It feels like a bad move for them to come out and say, "You get nothing." You can almost picture a judge shaking their head, thinking the DOJ should be upholding the law instead of bending it. With the new law Trump signed, there's a requirement to share certain documents, though there are exceptions that most folks can get behind. Take, for example, a document that's been redacted to protect the identity of a child. It seems reasonable, right? But then again, there are those cynical types out there who might question whether that redaction is hiding something deeper. They've seen plenty of these clashes before between the executive branch and Congress, like with Nixon. He tried to sidestep a bunch of issues and ultimately fell flat. We've also had moments with Reagan during the Iran-Contra scandal. And remember the 2001 commission? They managed to get quite a bit of information, but certain sections about foreign relations, especially regarding the Saudis, were heavily redacted. It's a tangled web where precedent shows Congress has a leg to stand on for demanding information, but there's also a historical tug-of-war at play. Now, when we look at internal DOJ communications, it's like striking gold if there's a cover-up involved. It's a hot topic, and honestly, it's become a running joke in shows like South Park and late-night comedy. It certainly has that cover-up vibe. That said, I'm not just throwing around accusations like Trump has a habit of lying. He definitely has. And then there's Pam Bondi flipping her story on whether she had a client list. Either she was telling the truth back then, or she's telling the truth now, but you can't have it both ways. It's pretty obvious that one of those statements just can't be true. And given how much time she had to sort things out, it's likely she wasn't confused, but leaning toward falsehood. There's a lot going on behind the scenes when it comes to DOJ communications, and the way they handle information can be pretty interesting. For one, they might end up releasing material that doesn't harm an ongoing investigation, which might seem surprising at first. After all, you'd think they'd want to keep anything that could be seen as damaging under wraps. But there are a bunch of reasons why they would release certain information. For starters, Freedom of Information Act requests come into play. And then there's the fact that in some situations, the government has to share information to stay within legal boundaries. Failing to do so could land them in hot water with sanctions. Sometimes a judge steps in to order this information be released, which means the process isn't always straightforward. Instead of just asking the person who wrote an email to hand over their correspondence, it often involves getting info from telecommunications providers or other government entities. Now, if you were to dig into this treasure trove of emails, you might uncover some intriguing interactions involving the higher-ups like the Attorney General or Todd Blanche, who had that controversial interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's co-conspirator. You could even find other DOJ folks discussing concerns about potential wrongdoing within their ranks, wondering if they should whistleblow or alert a watchdog after a lead prosecutor, Maureen Comey, who had been making strides for the victims, was suddenly let go. Perhaps those emails would reveal a reasonable explanation unrelated to Epstein. Based on what Congress sees, they could either feel reassured or raise an eyebrow at the findings. That's the current chapter under Trump. If we flip back to the Biden administration, there's a lingering question that Democrats can't shake off. They've put so much energy into making their case. And while they've acted on it with some success, thanks in part to Ro Khanna, the main sponsor of the bill, teaming up with Republican Massey, it does make you wonder why they didn't push harder when their party had the reins of both the White House and the DOJ. Why didn't they go straight to Merrick Garland during those 4 years to gather the materials they needed? It's a pretty significant point to ponder. Remember Alex Acosta? He was part of that original sweet deal that ended up cutting out the victims unlawfully, which essentially meant he helped Epstein out with that very easy house arrest situation in Florida. It really raises questions. Who knew about the deal? Was there any interference from higher-ups? I mean, just thinking about these things opens up a whole lot of questions we should explore in those documents. Now, shifting gears to something that's definitely on everyone's mind, the DOJ under Biden is facing some serious challenges, particularly concerning Epstein's death. I've touched on this in a few videos already, but this is the 5th and final category we're looking into, and honestly, things are only going to get messier for Donald Trump, which by extension means it's not looking good for JD Vance either. I can't say that doesn't bring me a bit of pleasure. We'll keep covering all these developments right here on the show. If you want to stick with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and maybe leave a thumbs up on this video. If you made it to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments to show your support. Keep fighting the good fight, everyone. Don't let anyone silence you. I'll see you next.